Hey folks, KR King here, and today I'm talking with Fred Wheeler, who has a YouTube channel called To D&D, one of my favorite YouTube channels. Fred is very knowledgeable on all aspects of D&D, and today what I want to talk about in terms of homebrewing is to ask Fred about how to use modules, taking parts out of them, whether it's the maps or the scenarios or their villains, and how you can incorporate them into your homebrewed campaign or learn lessons about how to construct these things. And what I thought we would do is talk about the Curse of Strahd. Fred is very knowledgeable on. So hello, Fred. Thank you for being on my channel.
Thank you, Kevin. I enjoyed talking about the Curse of Strahd, and I hope I have something useful to say.
So I played this many years ago in the 80s, the original version of it, which was interesting for me looking at the new version of how much stuff they've actually brought back into the new version in terms of the map, but also some of the expansion of this. Let's just start with give a quick overview of what the Curse of Strahd is about. Barovia, this plane. I know it could take a long time, but just give us a sort of general sense of what this module is about.
Basically, the original Ravenloft and the Curse of Strahd is simply about Strahd von Zarovich, and this vampire wasn't a vampire, but through his actions and really his key failures and faults within his own personality, he's brought himself completely down. I know some people consider him sort of like a tragic hero, but he's not really a tragic hero. He's just very messed up. He's a very messed up. It's really the whole thing about the Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft is all about that particular vampire and his desire to really torture the players' characters, the adventurers who enter his world. They're like little playthings. He's got a little playpen and they've come to visit, and he is going to make their life miserable. And that's essentially what I think the Curse of Strahd is all about.
Well, and it's great that you bring up the fact that some people want it because maybe it's the Gothic setting or the vampire. They want to make him sort of a tragic hero. But in fact, when you read this carefully, he is evil. He is dark. But I think there might be a lesson there in terms of setting up. How do you think when you set up a sort of big bad villain or someone that's going to be some evil character, what can Strahd teach you about setting up the prime evil person for a scenario?
Have a really good understanding of what evil looks like, because the worst thing you can do, I feel, and which is something I did not do with when I ran the original Ravenloft, which I used the Dungeons & Dragons 5e rules for, and when I ran the Curse of Strahd, I did not go with the evil laughter. The players did not realize that Strahd was actually the villain. I did not play him as the villain. Through metagaming, they know he's the villain. They figure that's a vampire and he's got to be bad. But Strahd always did lots of things for my players and always presented a nice veneer to pull their strings, to confuse them, to bring down their defenses. It's only really near the end, as you're playing out the character, that his true nature will come and become obvious.
Well, and it's a great point in terms of thinking about your villains. I think, if you play, let's say the evil emperor in Star Wars, right, where he's just totally evil, everything he does is evil, and you just think, well, who would follow that guy? Why would anyone go with him? Whereas when you have an evil character who presents himself not merely as trying to hide his evil, but say, look, this is the cards I've been dealt, and I'm just dealing with this, and here's what I'm doing. While in the background, of course, being evil, they're always, because again, Strahd is playing with this. He's playing against the good inferences that you have. Because I always think of those kind of characters. The vampire looks to life and says, you have no appreciation for being alive. And they look at the goodness and whatever, and it just drives them crazy. And they want to sort of work that goodness, right? They want to see how the characters can become evil. What do you think about, say, Madame Eva? She's kind of an ambiguous figure to me in Curse of Strahd because, well, explain a little about her.
The problem with Eva,
Or Ava, I guess.
Madam Ava or Eva, she is too hard to understand for a dungeon master. And frankly, you get two pictures with her when you look at the Curse of Strahd. She is working for Strahd, and yet she also is working or trying to assist the party. And it's a fine line because she will know that Strahd is able to sort of spy on her and keep a track of her. So she's always got to present herself as not actually helping the players' characters and pursuing the goals and instructions of Strahd. So therefore, as a character, the only thing that would ever sort of give her away is what's going on in her head, because everything that's going on outwardly is trying desperately to make sure that Strahd does not think that she has turned on him. But she has.
The use of they call it the Taroka Deck, or just tarot. I mean, it's obviously a tarot deck, but they've used another name. Like it's sort of like the old adventure books where if you go this direction or this direction. Talk about that deck and talk about how ideas maybe that you can use in a homebrewed campaign that you can get from the deck and how it operates in the Curse of Strahd.
So how it operates in the Curse of Strahd is you draw 5 cards, and these will set up your allies, where you find Strahd for the final conflict, and where you find some very key and important items that will help you defeat Strahd. But in the back of the book is actually sort of a very, I guess, fortune teller, very general, hard to figure out what's going on, a description for each card. So if you were to draw these cards in a different campaign, you could have a fortune teller do a reading for them and give them all sorts of nonsense that may or may not be true that will lead them either down the garden path or possibly give them a bit of a hint towards where they should be going. So I actually think it's really useful to have those cards and that section. It's only 2 pages. So you could definitely incorporate it into another campaign as a fortune teller by using the Taroka Deck.
There are in the Curse of Strahd a whole series of great encounters, with maps, with descriptions of every room, the way things are laid out. And I'm wondering what lessons, the Death House, the Amber Temple, all these different places that you can go when you're exploring Barovia, this land of Strahd. What do you think it tells you in terms of what you can get out of it in terms of looking at the maps, looking at the way the encounters are structured? The players, they enter this way, and then you read them some information. This is what you see. Then you enter. What things can you utilize that for your own homebrewed, made-up encounter?
But a lot of people don't understand, and I think this is where it would have been helpful if the designers had actually stated, this is just the building block. We've provided you with a book that's very dense with a lot of information. You do not have to use all of it. You can pull and cannibalize some of this and chuck it into your own games and never actually run the adventure itself. It would actually be very easy to do. There are plenty of very interesting locations within the Curse of Strahd. The Bone Grinder is one that I can think of that sort of sticks out as being a really sick environment. I can think of the Amber Temple, which you just mentioned, and even Castle Ravenloft. But the great thing about them is they can be transposed somewhere else.
I'm thinking about this in terms of lessons about map making. The Death House in the 5e thing has a stairway that goes from the attic all the way down to the dungeon. And I remember thinking, I have never thought to do something like that, right? It is such I don't know why you would build something that way, but it is such a fascinating thing. And also the layout of the castle, which, as I remember from the original, the one that they have in the 5e looks pretty much the same. I've used that castle thing for years because we didn't have map making software or anything. Should people feel free to repurpose these maps in any way they can?
Well, I think they should. I think one of the great things about, for example, the Ravenloft Castle, the Ravenloft castle is not completely designed around a real castle. It's actually designed, when people look at it, they get confused, right? And there's a reason for that, because it's supposed to reflect how Strahd's mind is operating. It is not a place that you can enter and find your way around easily. That's why staircases lead to places that don't make any sense, and why it's so difficult to follow. The original Ravenloft map was really difficult to deal with. They made a few tweaks to the new one, and it's a little bit easier to follow, but it's still difficult to follow. So it's actually a reflection of Strahd's mind. Something like the Death House makes no sense whatsoever, is because the sodding thing's alive. The house itself is a monster, and it is actually trying to destroy anybody who comes near it. Therefore, it shouldn't be organized in a way that makes a lot of sense. There are lots of really good maps. I've used a lot of town, village maps, particularly when I want to sort of run a campaign that is more mine and the players, where I want to start a starting point and I don't want to have to draw every single thing up myself. Or I decide I'm not going to just start with the name of the village, and then as they explore, I just draw in another block and then write down what the heck it is. So I think repurposing maps is really important. So I think it's something you should do.
You did a video that I would encourage my viewers to see about the Black Carriage. Because to me, the Black Carriage is this symbol from Nosferatu, from the original vampire sagas. And it's a great device. And you really explore it well in your video. So give us some things, your thoughts on the Black Carriage.
So the Black Carriage, it actually only provides you with maybe one or two ideas. I think there's one that's spelled out in the Curse of Strahd in terms of its purpose, and its purpose is to shock the players and to transport them from wherever the carriage is to the castle, Ravenloft. So that's not very much. The other purpose is, and it's not spelled out, that it can be used by Strahd as a way of commuting around Barovia. But this is actually another character. The actual carriage itself has many different purposes. It's much like the mist in the Curse of Strahd. People don't seem to understand that the mist is like the ultimate dungeon master tool to get anything done, to steer the players, to get them to stop them from moving into places you don't want them to go, and also to give them a sense of dread, because this thing is actually much like the carriage and also like the Death House, which is a location, but the mist is a personality in itself. It has a nature and a form to itself. And there's a lot of things that tend to do this in a lot of different adventures. I would say that the bone grinder is a good example. The actual windmill is a good example of something that has multiple purposes, that has been utilized to do different things, and it actually has its own personality. And a lot of things within the Curse of Strahd, because they've been there and they've been destroyed and then they've come back or been rebuilt many, many, many times, they actually develop their own personality. They're not just a structure. They're not just a means of transport. They're not just, even the sun in the Curse of Strahd and the way that it operates has got its own personality.
Oh, could you tell us a little more about the mill, the old, the bone grinder, and what that's all about?
So the bone grinder is basically a place where 3 night hags reside. And it's probably the worst place that the players' characters could go in adventure. They actually capture children and grind them up, turn them into pastries. Can you think of anything more disgusting and horrible and repulsive? My players were adamant that they wanted to destroy these hags. The environment itself is designed to be one that you can scare the players, introduce them an opportunity to try to rescue somebody. So I would definitely have children that they can rescue. I would definitely have elements where they have to deal with the night hags. I think they are more frightening in some respects than Strahd. in terms of how they operate. I think it's a great location. Certainly, it's portable. You can pick up that location and plonk it anywhere.
All right. Well, I hopefully my viewers out there go, and if you're running a homebrewed campaign, get the Curse of Strahd. Go out, look up some of these modules. Use some of the techniques that Fred has talked to you about, because they are an incredible resource to creating storylines for your homebrewed campaign. So thank you so much, Fred, for having this discussion.
Thank you, Kevin. And I hope that you will invite me back.
Absolutely. I hope. Yes, it was great for me. So let's do this again. Thank you, guys. As I always say, keep playing D&D and tell somebody else about it.